Welcome back, everyone, to our fifth episode of season 9 of the Truth and Freedom podcast, where awakening begins with asking the question most people are afraid to ask. I'm your host, Dr. Dan Amzalag, and this is not just another podcast. This is a journey into awareness, courage, and truth. So let's start today's monologue with a question that may be one of the most honest questions you'll ever ask yourself. What if the greatest obstacle standing between you and the life you want is not the world around you, but the story you've been telling yourself? Just think about that for a moment. Most of us can easily identify the people who have disappointed us. We can point to the circumstances that made life very difficult for us. We remember the opportunity we never received, the heartbreaks we endured, the financial struggles we faced, and the moments where life simply wasn't fair. But there's one obstacle we rarely recognize because it doesn't look like an obstacle. It looks like us. It speaks in our own voice. It sounds logical. It feels familiar. And because it comes from within, we assume it must be true. Psychologists call it self-sabotage. I call it one of the quietest forms of self-betrayal. So here's what fascinates me personally. Very few people wake up in the morning and consciously decide to ruin their own happiness. No one says today, I'd like to destroy my confidence, avoid my goals, and stay stuck. Yet every day, millions of people unknowingly do exactly that. Not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack talent, not because they lack opportunity, but because deep down, part of them believe they are safer staying where they are than becoming who they could be. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever procrastinated on something that could have changed your life? Have you delayed making an important phone call? Avoided applying for a job you secretly wanted? Stayed in a relationship you had already ended emotionally? Continued living beneath your potential even though you knew you were capable of more? Most people call that laziness. I personally don't. Very often, procrastination isn't a time management problem. It's an emotional protection strategy. Because if you never try, you never fail. If you never ask, you never hear no. If you never love, you never risk heartbreak. And if you never pursue your dream, you never discover whether you're capable of achieving it. In other words, self-sabotage often disguises itself as self-protection. The tragedy is that the same walls built to protect us from disappointment also keeps out growth, purpose, and fulfillment. Now imagine standing at the edge of a beautiful ocean, dreaming of sailing to a new destination. You buy the boat, you gather supplies, you study navigation, you prepare for months. But when it's finally time to leave, you refuse to untie the rope securing the boat to the dock. Then you spend years wondering why you never reach your destination. That's what self-sabotage looks like. You prepare endlessly. You plan endlessly. You research endlessly. You wait for the perfect moment, but you never untie the rope. And then you ask yourself, maybe it just wasn't meant to be. That's not really the way to go or to think. Sometimes it wasn't fate. Sometimes it was fear. And here's another uncomfortable truth. Many people are more afraid of success than they are of failure. That sounds strange, doesn't it? But think about it. Success brings visibility, responsibility, higher expectation, change. And change can feel threatening to a mind that has learned to equate familiarity with safety. Now imagine someone who has spent years believing they are good enough. Now imagine they suddenly receive recognition, praise, or an incredible opportunity. So instead of celebrating, they become uncomfortable. Why? Well, because external success now conflicts with their internal identity. And when their identity and opportunity collide, identity usually wins. That's why people sometimes walk away from healthy relationships, quit promising careers, push away people who genuinely love them, or convince themselves they don't deserve happiness. Not because happiness is unavailable, but because happiness feels unfamiliar. The human mind is remarkable. It will often choose familiar pain over unfamiliar possibility. Let that sink in for a moment. Familiar pain feels predictable. Predictability feels safe, even when it hurts. This is why so many people repeat the same patterns years after years while sincerely believing they're trying to change. You cannot constantly create a new life while protecting an old identity. Sooner or later, one has to give away. Now, here's something I want you to remember. Your comfort zone is not always a place of peace. Sometimes it's simply a place where your fears know the address. Growth begins the moment you become willing to disappoint the version of yourself that has been settling for less. Now, I want you to challenge another myth. People often says, I believe in myself once I succeed. But confidence doesn't come after action. Confidence grows because of action. Every courageous decision teaches your brain something powerful. I survived every difficult conversation. I survived every rejection. I survived every failure. I survived. Confidence is not the absence of fear. It's the evidence that you've learned fear doesn't have the final word. Now, what if you stop asking yourself, what if I fail? And start asking, what if I regret never trying? Years from now, very few people regret taking meaningful risk. Many regret the dreams they abandoned, the words they never spoke, the love never expressed, the opportunities they kept postponing. Because regret has a way of becoming heavier than failure. Failure teaches, regret lingers. Now, let me ask you one final question. Imagine meeting the person you could become 5 years from now. Healthier, wiser, more peaceful, more confident, living with purpose. Would that future version of you thank you for the decision you're making today? Or would they gently ask, why did you wait for so long to believe in you? That question stays with me. Because every decision we make today is introducing us to the person you'll become tomorrow. No one accidentally creates an extraordinary life. It is built one courageous choice at a time, one boundary, one honest conversation with yourself, one risk, one act of forgiveness, one step taken despite uncertainty. And perhaps the greatest act of courage isn't changing the world. Perhaps it's refusing to keep getting in your own way. So, as we close today's episode, I'd like you to pay attention this week to one simple phrase. Whenever you catch yourself saying, I can't, or I'll do it later, or I'm probably not good enough, or I'm not ready, pause for a second and ask yourself, is this reality, or is this fear pretending to be wisdom? That one question has the power to interrupt years of unconscious self-sabotage. Because awareness creates choice. The choice creates freedom. On that note, I'd like to thank you all for joining me on today's Truth and Freedom podcast, and I look forward to continuing this journey of awareness, courage, and freedom with you in our next episode. Until then, my little friends, stay curious, stay awake, and stay free.